It's 1 minute after noon, so there will probably be a few people still joining us. My name is Ross Hawkins. I'm the director of the Academic Advising and Transfer Center. And as always, I'm thrilled that so many of you have chosen to join us via Zoom for this advisor forum. Today's advisor forum is going to focus on transfer advising, go through some transfer advising updates, and also talk a little bit about some proactive outreach that we can be doing as transfer advisors, as individuals who work with transfer students, to reach out to those students and welcome them to the Missouri State community. Before I do introductions and turn it over to the panelists, I'd like to just give a couple quick updates. One being that this will be our final advisor forum for a little over a month. We're taking a break, as we typically do in November, since we know that registration volume, student volume is going to pick up. So our final advisor forum for the fall 2020 semester will be on December 3rd, which is a Thursday, again from 12 to 1 via Zoom. And the presenters are from the English Language Institute. They're going to be doing an advisor forum on managing the needs of international students whose first language is not English. So please make plans to join us on Thursday, December 3rd for that final advisor forum for the fall semester. In spring 2021, all advisor forums will be offered via Zoom. So we're going to continue this format for the spring 2021 semester. Soon you will be seeing some information in Inside Missouri State that will allow you to provide ideas on topics, suggestions for topics for our advisor forum series for the spring semester. So if you have a topic in mind, please look in Inside Missouri State for an online form that you can complete, or you can always send an idea to me as well. I also encourage those of you to think about presenting at an advisor forum in a future semester. If you have not yet added your name to the chat feature, please do so. That is how we are recording attendance for the advisor forums, and you receive master advisor credit by using that chat feature. So please make sure that you indicate your name in the chat feature. I did want to also mention that this advisor forum is going to be recorded, and it will be posted on our Mo State Advising YouTube channel for individuals who are not able to join us today via Zoom. The recording will be made available and they can watch it at a later date. With all that being said, I will turn it over. I know that you're here to listen to our panelists to learn more about transfer advising. I am so happy to introduce Caitie Dyer. Caitie is the transfer advisor in the Academic Advising and Transfer Center. Dr. Kelly Wood is joining us from the Center for Academic Success and Transition. As many of you know, Kelly is our Associate Provost for Student Success and also the University Transfer Articulation Officer, and also Nathan Hoff from the Office of the Registrar, who's going to be giving us some important updates from that side of the house and the impact that it has on our transfer students and our advising practices. So with that being said, thank you, Caitie, Kelly, and Nathan for joining us today, and I will turn it over to the three of you.
All right, thanks, Ross. I get the pleasure of doing the introduction, and while I do this, I'd encourage all the panelists, or excuse me, all the attendees to speaker view. I think is the best view in this because we're up to like 43 people, and if you've got it on the gallery view, you see all these different heads moving and pictures. So I think the picture is better in speaker view. And there's only 3 of us here, and we're only going to be talking one at a time, so it shouldn't be too messy for you that way. So thanks, Ross, for the introductions. I want to welcome everybody, and so happy to have you here joining us today. I'm going to give you a quick overview of our topics and then hand it over to Caitie and Nathan, who are our experts today, and they're going to be sharing with you some, I know, some great information. So the first thing that we're going to be covering probably for about half of our time is going over Core 42 and some specific strategies for you as advisors in using it, especially the technology that we have. The second thing is Caitie's going to talk about some proactive outreach initiatives, as Ross mentioned. So she's going to spend some time talking to you about what she's been doing, and I think she'll have some great ideas for you and how that's going to work. And then lastly, well, I should say I think Lori Day, if she's joined us, we're going to have an opportunity for some Q&A with her in terms of the reevaluation process. And then I'll go over a few transfer initiatives at the very end to wrap it up. So that's our overview for today, and we do want you to submit questions, so please use the chat feature to put your questions in. I'm going to be monitoring them, and then after each of our sections we'll have some time to review and discuss a few of those questions that you have. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nathan and Caitie. They're going to be talking to you about Core 42 and a variety of technology pieces that are available to you. So Caitie and Nathan, you're next.
I'm trying to share my screen. Is that working?
Yes.
Everybody sees a degree audit?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to start at the degree audit as just kind of home base for this conversation, because as you're going to see, we've tried to make Core 42 as accessible as possible from the degree audit so that you don't have to go digging lots of other university websites. Core 42 can be a little bit intimidating for those of us that don't maybe work with it every day. So that's what the purpose of these next few minutes is to try and make it more digestible and easier to understand for those of us that don't work with it every day. So I want to start out with the university's Core 42 website and kind of explain the purpose about why it's designed the way that it is, and an easy way to access it from the degree audit so that you don't have to know a web address is to go up here to this link section, and you'll see there's a link that says Core 42 resources already on that list. And that will open you up to the Degreeworks Core 42 resources page. I'm going to start at the university website, which you'll notice is a question-based website. This website was developed between a group of advisors and our office, where we were getting a lot of questions when Core 42 started. So we said, let's just design a website that goes through the questions in the order that we typically get them as people that work with Core 42. So the two that I want to point out on this website to start is, well, what is Core 42 and who's eligible for it? Core 42 is basically a state legislative driven alternative to general education that certain students by legislative demand have the right to do, which are students who entered in spring 2019 or later and have 12 hours or more of transferable credit from a Core 42 institution after high school. If you meet those criteria, Missouri State puts you in Core 42 automatically. And a good thing to know as an advisor is you don't have to figure that out. The Office of Admissions figures that eligibility out for you as they process the student's admission to the university. Of course, some students that start on Core 42 may prefer to do our university general education, and you'll notice these questions flow right into that. If I'm eligible for Core 42, but prefer to do Missouri State General Education, can I do that? You sure can. You just have to click on a form that takes about 30 seconds to fill out and submit, and that will take care of getting you switched. So it's a very easy process. We won't go through all these questions obviously today, but this is a really good resource for answering some of those basics about Core 42. I'm going to switch back to the degree audit, and we'll look at the audit itself. I've had a few phone calls over the last couple months where advisors have contacted in kind of a panic and said the degree audit's broken. There's this strange material audit, and what it's been is Core 42, and maybe it's just the first time that the advisor has seen Core 42, and it can look a little intimidating at first. It looks like a general degree audit. You see sections and courses listed, but the thing that really seems to trip people up at first is you have these strange symbols after some of the courses. Like this requirement says take 3 credits in A&T 100 or 125 or 303 or 2 @ with an attribute that equals M001. And how in the world do you know what that means? These @ are wildcards, and what it's saying is any course prefix and any course number with an attribute of M001. Well, what is an attribute of M001? The state groups these courses into what are called motor areas. So like our Geography 100 course is in with Mizzou's equivalent to that and Central Missouri's equivalent to that. And they put it into a label called a motor number. But sometimes there may be an area that we as a university don't have a course that's part of, and we need to have a mechanism for that course to be accepted, because by legislative mandate, we have to take it for Core 42. So these attributes are ways to get a course in that's not directly equivalent to one of our courses. And the great news as an advisor is if you're advising a student that is transferred to Missouri State and they're done with transfer work, you can just pretend that an eraser went over this and you don't even need to look at it. Just pretend it's gone. All you need to worry about is the Missouri State courses in front. This is just the mechanism for getting their transfer work in. Really, the only question that you might get for something like that is from a student that says, I'm going home for the summer and I want to take a course in this category. So can you help me figure out some courses I can take back home? So in order to do that, you have to be able to tell what this means. And we have a couple of resources available to help you do that. It's a little bit like a puzzle, but we've tried to make it an easy puzzle. So again, up on the links, if I click on the Core 42 website, we're going to go over a couple different documents that are here. One of them is Core 42 attribute definitions and Core 42 worksheet. In our example with these anthropology, we'll look up attribute M002. So if I click on this, it tells me M002 equates to motor area ANTH 201, cultural anthropology. A natural question might be, well, why don't you just name the attribute motor ANTH 201? That would be a lot more straightforward. There's a real easy answer for that. We can't have attributes that are more than 4 characters long. So we can't have one that's 9 or 10 digits long. So this is the best we can do. So now we know that a course from motor area ANTH 201 works in this category. Another tool that is available to us is Darren in the Academic Advising Center does a great job on this Core 42 worksheet to try and make it easier for us to advise students on Core 42. You'll also see those attribute numbers are scattered throughout this worksheet as well. So I can go find, it's not in numerical order, so they can be a little bit harder to find. But somewhere in here, we will have our motor number. There it is, M002. What's nice about the worksheet view is you can easily see what Missouri State courses are equivalent to that motor area as well. So it's just a matter of which tool is the most helpful to you. If you just want to quickly find M002 numerically, that first document may be the quickest for you. If you want to see how it kind of groups and applies to a worksheet, this document may be the better one for you to use. Now that we know that ANTH 201 is the area, the motor area that we need coursework from, the next question is, okay, well, what kind of courses meet that? And we're going to transition to Caitie, and she's going to show you a resource that you can use to do that.
Hello, everybody. So, let me share my screen. I use this screen a good bit of the time, this transfer equivalency screen, for a good variety of reasons. It takes a solid minute to get to if you don't have it bookmarked. I'm going to show you how to do that, but I would encourage you to bookmark it if you use it a good amount. So if you go to the main Missouri State page and you type in Transfer Center, hopefully, you're going to come to this Transfer Center website here. Down at the bottom, the easiest way for me to do that, there's a button that says Learn How Credits Transfer. Excuse me. Over here, you're going to see course equivalency guides, and then see how your courses transfer. I will tell you that that's a good amount of clicks for anybody transferring to Missouri State. So if you have students who are interested in using this as a tool, you might go ahead and just send them the link too that you bookmarked. So when you come down, say we've got somebody transferring from OTC. So we're going to find OTC in this big long list of places. Maybe. And then if you say all and display core eligible courses, when you click get courses, it's going to give you a good list of things. So it's going to give you the core 42 numbers over here. So we were just talking about Anthropology 201, and this shows you that at OTC, the course for that is Ant 220. It transfers over as Anthropology 100, which is World Cultures, and gives you the core 42 number. This is a great resource for anybody who is prospective and looking to transfer to Missouri State, or anybody like Nathan said who's maybe looking to do a summer course and looking to take something back at their institution closer to home, who says, I would like to take a course, but I don't know which one is going to transfer the best. This is where I use this a good amount of the time. And I'm going to give it back to you, Nathan.
I was checking something real quick. You showed both searches, both by school and by motor number?
I think yes. Maybe I did not. Let's see.
I didn't think we did the motor number, which might actually be the easier one of the two to do.
Will you share with
I'll
me
do
which
that.
one you're doing?
Yeah. Let me share again. Are we seeing it now? Sharing working? Okay.
Yes.
Along those lines, one of the links we have up here is for transfer equivalency. So it'll take you there as a quick hop to get there. This was the part that I was mentioning. Did we go over this part too? Okay. So there's kind of two ways to search. One of them is by school. I can look up all of OTCs at once. But maybe for that summer question about, I want to find a class that comes in as one of the motor ANTH 201 courses, I can click down here at the bottom where it says transfer equivalency search, and it will take me to where I can say, instead of looking at just OTC, I want to look for any course that's on the guide that comes in as ANTH 201 motor area for core 42. And I search, and it will give me a list of all the schools that have a core 42 course that's ANTH 201. So East Central, Metropolitan Community College, and Mineral Area. And so that's great, like if you've got a student that's in St. Louis and they want to know, well, what all schools in the St. Louis area have a course that I could take? Well, St. Louis Community College does, St. Charles Community College does, East Central does. So it can work really well for those situations, for that, taking a course at home for the summer. So one last thing I want to cover on the degree audit is we recognized early on that it's really challenging from a worksheet or from a degree audit to have everything separated. and try to figure out for the student that asked, so which one of these is best for me? So we tried to develop a tool to enable an advisor or a student easier access to doing that comparison. And we call it the administrative audit, which we've had now for a little over a year. But how you run it, it's a what if degree audit, but it's not your standard one. So I'm going to click on this what if link. And this is going to sound like a really strange set of things to click on. But I'm going to say I want to run a what if degree audit for a non-degree seeking situation. Because this audit that I'm running, it's not for a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. It's just kind of an administrative thing. So that it doesn't really matter what catalog year I pick. And on this list of majors, I'm going to scroll to the very last item on the audit, where it says ZZ-Administrative Audit. And I'll click that box. And as this runs, the purpose of this administrative audit, we originally built it in the Office of the Registrar to be able to check a couple key things we needed to for athletic eligibility. It wasn't really intended for use outside the office. It's just what are those things that maybe we need to take a look at that we can't have on a standard student degree audit. So you'll notice some weird things on it, like instead of looking for 120 credits, it looks for 1,120 credits. So that item never checks off and we can see exactly how many a student has. Does something similar with the 40-hour upper division requirement. It calculates the student's last 60 credits in terms of an undergraduate GPA. Sometimes students will get that question on like a grad school application, that kind of thing. Well, this audit will give that to them. But for the purposes of what we're talking about today, the most helpful thing is you'll notice this is a fake student that doesn't have any coursework, but it lists the core 42 requirements, and then it's followed by the general education requirements. So on a student's audit that has real coursework, you can compare the two and see where the student is at in each and figure out which one it works best for the student. The only caveat that I would give to using it is if you are in a department that has some restrictions about being able to share with general education. I'll pick on English because they're one that comes to mind in terms of having some of those restrictions. You might get a slightly different result if you run this audit versus an English majors core 42, because this audit doesn't have a major on it. So there's nothing to block a course from counting. Everything's going to count that's eligible towards core 42. Whereas if I'm on an English audit with core 42 and there's a course that can count both in the major and core 42, it's only going to count towards one or the other. So we've had a couple questions over time about, well, I used that administrative audit, but I got a slightly different result. And that was the reason why, is it was being ran with a major that had some sharing restrictions. But outside of that, it works great for comparison's sake. And I'll stop sharing my screen now. And I think we're going to transition to Caitie next, unless there are any specific questions about what we have covered thus far.
Yeah, let's see if we've got some questions that might come in. And also, while you're typing those in, potentially, folks, Nathan, just as a quick series of steps. So you did a what if, and then you clicked non-degree seeking for the degree and ZZ admin audit for the major. Is that right?
I did, but also keep in mind that you don't have to memorize those steps. If you, actually, I'll share my screen for just a minute and show this.
I wondered if there was another way in.
Is it sharing now?
Yep.
Okay. Again, if I'm back here on the degree audit, if I click on links, there's a Degreeworks homepage. And when I go to that, over on the left navigation bar, there's Degreeworks users guides. And there's 4 different ones. There's one for students. There's one for general advisement. There's one for department heads and advisors who do exception processing and all that. And there's one for Office of the Registrar staff. And whichever one of these that you use, it doesn't matter which one. I'll click on the general advisement one. It's got a table of contents with various things that you can do. The last item in every one of these guides is how to generate an administrative audit. And it has screenshots of how you need to fill it in. So don't feel like you need to memorize it. We've got those instructions for you that you can follow and run this audit.
That's great. And that was off of your off of the links item. I put in the chat earlier that that was probably your best first tip of the day, which was that links drop down menu in the degree audit main landing page. So I think that's really helpful.
So all four of those users guides will contain those instructions.
Good, that's great. So either you could type in a question, or if you want to unmute, you could ask Nathan or Caitie a question, whether it's about the transfer equivalency guides, the administrative audit, or just the general Core 42 audit items. That means you nailed it on those main items, but I'm sure if you all have some questions. Looks like Julie Galloway, how did you get to the page to look up the courses again? So I think that's for Caitie, and that's on the transfer equivalency guide, I believe. So as Caitie's pulling that up, there's two ways to get to the transfer equivalency guide. One is through our Transfer Center webpage, or if you are in My Missouri State under Teaching and Advising tab, then you can find the transfer equivalency guide link as just a quick link there. So if you're advising a student in your office, that's one way to do that. If you want to send them the link, you can directly, which is what Caitie was showing you earlier.
And then also that links page within the degree audit has a direct link to get there as well.
Right. So there's three ways to get to it. And so Caitie, that's good to know, is a lot of folks are interested in how we use that transfer equivalency guide. And I think it's okay for you to just take a couple of minutes to review that again. And Jim's put a couple of links in there in the chat as well.
I say it's good to know that you can reach these links through the degree audit. For those of us who know a lot about the degree audit, I think that this is a good route to know for students who may not know how to look at those things. So if they are on the Transfer Center website and they scroll all the way down to where it says Learn How Credits Transfer, what you're looking for is how college credit transfers, this section right here. There's a link in there, which is how we got to the page before the equivalency guide. So if you click on see how courses transfer to Missouri State, this is how we're going to get to the first one, the first page that we talked about, the transfer equivalency guide. Like I said, when I meet with incoming transfer students or prospective transfer students, I personally use this page a lot for transfer advising, lots of times for prospective students. And so the way that I use this, just as a reminder, say we're looking for a specific college, let's do Asbury, because I don't know what that one is. You can either do a certain range. So if they send you a list of classes and say, I want to know how these transfer, right? Say they're looking at some sort of anthropology class. I'm not sure where Asbury College is. So if it's outside of Missouri, the Core 42 stuff is not going to be applicable to them. So you can still say display Core 42 eligible courses, but that may not be the case if they're not from Missouri. So we're going to say get courses. There's nothing. Asbury was a terrible example. I apologize, everyone, but that's how it would normally work. The search that we just looked at with Nathan, the link for that is right below on the same page. This is how you can look for the specific Core 42 courses, or if you know an MSU code, I'm going to say Psych 121 because I look at that one a lot. and you say search, it's going to show you all of the courses from all of the different universities that would come in as Missouri State Psych 121. And so this is also how you can use this. It'll say the Core 42 eligible courses on the side, or it should. So like Avelia has a Core 42 eligible course because it's in Missouri, but there are definitely other places all over that have a course that would come in as Psych 121.
And just a quick follow-up to Donna Rebman, who works really closely with our OTC transfer students, had said, it's important to know as transfer advisors that the transfer equivalency guide also includes courses that may no longer be offered at that institution. And so a student might look up and say, oh, they have that amazing, you know, gender, sex, and self course. And it will show up in the transfer equivalency guide, but they don't offer it anymore. So as you see in the chat feature, just know that you may need to have the student check the current catalog of that institution to see if they're offering it in the semester that the student wants to go. So, and also Michelle Hewlett has mentioned too that some study away courses have been added to the transfer equivalency guide, and that's really helpful, as I know students are interested in ramping up study away again as we move along through this. So, well, good. Keep the questions coming or the comments in the chat feature, and Caitie will transfer to you, pardon the pun, but to talk about outreach activities that, that you have been undertaking.
That pun is my favorite. So the Academic Advising and Transfer Center just wanted to share some things that we're working on with you. Right now, Ross, Donna, and I are in the process of working with Ben Metzger in Computer Services to update the transfer advisor list and have that information included for students newly admitted to Missouri State. So traditionally what happened was transfer students were admitted to the university and they needed themselves to go to an already created transfer advisor list to find their assigned advisor and then make the outreach themselves. What we're looking to do is have that information already included within their acceptance package of sorts so that they know who their advisor is and how to reach out to them without having to search for it through a number of different varieties. One of the things that's important to remember about transfer students is they're not just learning how to work our university system, they're unlearning what they already knew and relearning what we do here. So as many steps as we can take out, I think is important when we're looking at how to help transfer students move forward. The other part of that is I get a good number of emails asking, well, I want to be fashion merchandising, but I don't see that on the transfer advising list. Because that's part of the Business Advisement Center and it's not specifically stated who the specific advisor is. Some of those are confusing per department and center. So we're trying to take out some of that confusion with that outreach effort through computer services and admissions. The other thing that we've done recently is to start proactively sending out emails to newly admitted, undeclared, pre-health and pre-law transfer students for our center through the admissions EMP system. So what that means is EMP is a system that can run reports on specific groups of students. So before we set up the process, I've been pulling names of students who had been newly admitted to the university who were undeclared pre-law and pre-health and sending them out an email individually every time there were new people on that list. In order to make that process more efficient, we worked with our friends in admissions to have their system automatically send the same email that I was sending just without me. So we were taking out a step in the process. So we designed the emails, they set up the system, and now those emails automatically go out, I think a few days after transfer students are admitted. Again, the whole purpose of that is to eliminate a step for transfer students to seem more friendly, to seem more inviting, like we want them here. And we do, right? When we're welcoming transfer students to the university, we don't want them to get bogged down in the policy and procedure and not be excited about their experience. On top of worrying about everything else, advising should be fun and exciting, and probably the first time they're able to meet one-on-one with a person from Missouri State. Depending on where they're coming from, that's probably a more normal occurrence to meet with one other person, but in this aspect, for a larger university, it's not, right? It's emails and multiple people and phone calls. And advising is the first time many of them get to have a one-on-one experience with attention devoted specifically to them. So all of those outreach efforts are really to provide more support, take out some of the process, and make it easier for transfer students to get connected to you all. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. But the people I work with in admissions, just so you all know, are Ben Metzger and Ty McCoy. They were and are both wonderful to work with and great partners for our office. They're also willing to do some of those things for other offices as well. So if you wanted to start that process of using EMP to reach out to students proactively in that sense, I believe that they would be willing to receive an email and start the process with you. They went through a number of email reviews to make sure that everything was okay for everyone that was being said, but then they really set up the system in order to send those things out.
That's a great tip, Caitie. I think those joining us today would like to, for those of you who are dedicated to advising transfer students, that's a great opportunity to be proactive in reaching out to our transfer students. And I know you spent a lot of time this summer reaching out to admitted transfer students and seeing if they needed anything, to check in with them. And I think that those are great strategies and tips for everybody to use, depending on what your responsibility is with advising and everything. But those personal contacts, just as an institution broadly, all the calls that we made to students earlier in spring when we went online, and then follow-ups in the summer. Students and family members have responded so positively to our personal contacts. Now, I realize that not everybody can do that. It's Caitie's job to work directly with all the transfer students that she has in her area. But for those of you who have transfer advising as a portion of your service responsibilities, you may look at other ways of personalizing that with emails to students once they're admitted, and even just asking them would they like to receive a call from you if you've got that time, especially in the summer. So be thinking about ways that you can proactively reach out to students that way.
The automated process of that through EMP is so appealing because I know that many transfer students are admitted in November, and November is a pretty busy time. So the fact that those can be sent out without me doing anything was really appealing when starting to set up this process. So know that as of right now, now that that process is done, I do not much for it, except for to see how many students have or have not connected, and that can be in a chunk basis. So the emails themselves are being sent completely automatic without me. And that's a nice feature of that tool.
Yeah. So any of the transfer advisors on the meeting today, I think if you want to talk with Caitie a little bit more, she'd be happy to share with you or maybe the learning curve that it took to work with the EMP and to try to allay some concerns or fears that somebody has is like, oh no, I got to learn something else. But that if it works pretty well for you, and that she could talk you through it ahead of contacting admissions. Good. All right. So I've been thinking about as we've been hearing about from Caitie and Nathan that the next item is about reevaluations and how that process happens. And I was thinking, should we have put that first? Like, should we have started with reevaluations? Because sequentially, maybe that happens for students, but it's always good to meet the people. I like to say it in our office, meet the people in your neighborhood. So meeting Caitie today, and for those of you who know Nathan, seeing him, but also Lori Day, who is our senior admissions evaluator, and she's the one that will review courses that come in for transfer that aren't automatic, and work with departments on that process. So, you know, that process for some advisors can be a little mysterious. So we have Lori Day on the call today, and wanted to give any of you all on the meeting today to ask her questions about how that process works. Maybe you've had a nagging question that you've had about a specific course, or something that's happened with a student that that Lori can help you out with. Now's the time to ask Lori. She's got her camera on and ready to take your questions. So Lori, did you want to add anything really quick about sort of the typical questions that you get, or things that you've streamlined over the years that people should know about?
Usually the most question, what we're trying to say, the most question that I get is, how long is it going to take? And, you know, that can range from a day to a month. And that just kind of really depends on the person that is approving those courses. I encourage all the transfer students, when they come over, and I have to give them elective credit for courses that have been brought in, to always go through the reevaluation process. Because the answer is going to be no unless you go through it, you know, all the time. So to me, it's a very easy process to do. It usually doesn't take the student too long to do it, other than, you know, copy and paste out of their college, their college catalog, and then just waiting for the approver to approve it or deny it.
So also, you mentioned about time, because we hear this question a lot, Lori. So I've gotten a course for GEP, for example, and I've approved that evaluation, that reevaluation request. And then I look on the transfer credit reevaluation or the degree audit, and it's not there yet. So that's what you were referring to in terms of time, right? That it's not an automatic. The minute you reevaluate something, and if you do that in your department, it takes time for within the admissions office to change that in a student's transcript. Is that right?
And I'm the one that's doing that. So if I'm for some reason not here, or, you know, and I don't do it every day, I hate to say that, but I go through and look at it periodically throughout the week. And, you know, I'm the one that changes it in their records. So sometimes takes a little bit longer, but sometimes we're waiting on the approver to approve or deny the course. And the students always get something in their notes, in their advising notes, whether it's been approved or denied. So they know. And a lot of times when they've been approved and I haven't got it in their system yet, they're calling me and emailing me, which is fine, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get it right away. So if you run across that yes, it's been approved and it's just not changed, it's my fault. So just call me, let me know. I'll be happy to put it in right that moment.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to know, that you wouldn't see that as an infringement or like an extra thing that you've got to do. No, this is, hey, we've got this, and many of us know that when students don't see that reevaluation has changed, they get pretty worked up.
Yes, they do.
And so even if it's just an email or a call to you to say, hey, I approve this, when, you know,
right,
get this change made, you usually do it on the phone when we're on the phone together. So it can happen that quick.
Oh yeah, and I try to, because I know, you know, they're wanting to register for a course, or they just are anxious and they want to see it done, and I'd be the same way. So yeah, that's why I get paid the big bucks.
Okay. And so any other common things that come across your plate that you'd like the transfer advisors who are with us today to know about, in terms of either your role or what you can and can't do, or maybe understanding that people have an opportunity to make recommendations to you?
Not really. I mean, most of the time the advisors, they all know that I'm, you know, what I'm dealing with, and they're more than sweet about it. So it's just me getting things done, and like I said, I'm more than happy to do it right at the moment, because there's a lot of people waiting on it. just realized that sometimes people request things that I have no control over. So I had to contact the department head, and then that takes a little bit of time. And
Yeah.
so, but like I said, more than happy to do it. It's just take some time.
Okay.
Lori, there was a question that came in through the chat. Someone asked how the initial transfer credit works, like is it automated? Can you kind of just give a minute explanation of how the initial evaluation occurs? Like from the guide versus the things that, you guys have to make decisions about, that kind of stuff.
Well, and I don't know if you want to go into this much, but I evaluate courses, transfer credit courses that come in off their transcripts. And I'm just allowed to do so many, I can usually give gen eds, but I can't give upper elective credit, unless it's already been approved. And that's why I give a lot of elective credit. And I know that irritates the students and probably irritates some of the advisors. And that's when I tell them, go through the reevaluation process and just get it reevaluated. And most of the approvers are more than happy to look at things. And if it's out there for too long, if it's out there for usually more than 2 weeks, I contact the department head and ask them to look at it. And they're kind of like me. They're like, oh, sorry, I just missed it. I'm more than happy to look at it. Is that what you mean, Nathan?
Yeah, and I think just to get across, I think for this group, that the majority of the original evaluation comes from the information on the equivalency guide.
It does.
When there's already pre-established equivalencies, the work gets put on, and then whatever those equivalencies are applied to it. It's more the ones that there's not an existing equivalency where decisions have to be made.
Yeah, that's when I have to make them. And a lot of times things are set way before me, that they either would come in as elective, and the approvers would go in and say, okay, you need to change it for this student, or you need to change it for all students. When I can change it for all students, then of course I'm going to change it in the guide. And as y'all know, that I'm responsible for the guide also and keeping it updated. So if you run across something that's in your department that you're like, that's not right, let me know. More than happy to change it for y'all.
A quick follow-up to something I think I had a conversation with Lori and Ross on a while back was, did we get the transfer credit initiation option updated, because there was a time when some of us couldn't initiate a transfer credit reevaluation? Do you know if that's been fixed, or because that was a question in the chat as well?
As you all know, we have lots of issues with the system. All of a sudden it won't work. All of a sudden, radio button's gone or appears here. So I contact MIS. They're really good and they're working on it. But some of this stuff just all of a sudden it doesn't work at all. I don't know if that initiate area is available. I can only see just a small amount, and so I don't get to see where the approvers can approve and do things like that. And sometimes it works, and I hate to say it, and then sometimes it doesn't work.
I see. Yeah, you're right. For some people, it may be working. For others, so if we've got somebody that it's not working for, should they call the computer services help desk or put in a ticket?
Yeah, it's Megan. How do you say your last name? Schiller, I think it is. She's the one that's taking care of it now, and if you guys want to just go on and email her, that's perfect too. If you want to CC me on it or send it to me and I send it on to her, I don't have to be the middleman through this, because y'all know, yes, thank you, what's working, what's not working. And like I said, I can't really see what you guys see. So, yeah, okay. Just you can CC me on there, and I'll just kind of keep in touch. And
perfect.
It's a system. It works some days and doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for your comments, Lori, on here. We appreciate hearing from you on that, because like I said earlier, sometimes it can be a mystery, and it's great to see a face and the name and the person all together of who gets to do that amazing work. So thanks. So I think to wrap up our discussion here would be to let you all know that as part of my role as Associate Provost for Student Success, I am now have the opportunity to be the Transfer Articulation Officer. So while we haven't changed that on the web page yet, we are about to. So if you go to the transfer articulation page right now, you'll see that Dr. Darabi's name and image is still there. And any appeals and issues would get forwarded to our administrative assistant, Blanca. So it's not that they're just going to sit there, but right now, any appeals that would come forward on that are coming to us. But as soon as, sorry, I've got a little errant fly around me. As soon as we can get our webpage updated, it will show for me being there. And I think maybe within 24 hours, we'll have our new student success webpage up there. And so I'm excited to have that opportunity coming forward and all the work that folks have been doing on getting that updated. So, so that's one item for you to be aware of. We're also, a number of us on this call are on the Transfer Council, and the Transfer Council is it's a kind of a working group that helps provide guidance for transfer advising, transfer policies, transfer articulation agreements, and that is chaired by Joy Norris, out of the Associate Provost for Outreach. And it has folks like Bart Tibbs from the admissions office, Ross Hawkins, myself, Jamie Ross from Adult Student Services, and I believe I'm missing some people, but I know there are other folks from admissions and enrollment services on there. And we meet once a month to talk through those issues. And I'm excited about a couple of things I just wanted to briefly share with you. We're going to be refreshing and updating the Transfer Center webpage. We have done a review of it. We've gotten a proposal for marketing and communication for it. And so really, I believe that within the next 3 months, we'll have a new Transfer Center webpage refresh for you to see. And that's really to help students navigate the page better for what they are interested in right away. I think like what Caitie was showing earlier about reducing the number of clicks for students, but then also having a section in there for advisors to get access, easy access to information. But the audience is primarily students. So we're excited about that coming up in the next couple of months. We're also usually in the fall, but I think it'll happen next year. We didn't do it this fall. We do a transfer student satisfaction survey. Just before this advisor forum, we were in a meeting with the Transfer Council, and we were reviewing that student satisfaction survey. And so we'll have that, I think, ready to roll out next year. We send that to students after they've been admitted and registered. And so it tells us a little bit about why they chose Missouri State, what was good about their transfer experience, what were areas that we can improve. So we use that to guide our actions and how we're supporting transfer students, whether it's through the advising process. A lot of these technology things that Caitie and Nathan showed you today with equivalencies and Core 42 worksheets that we have really come from you all, but also feedback from our students. So that is an important survey for us to do on a regular basis. And then one other item really briefly is that we're working with some community colleges on a dual admission process. And that would be for a student who started at another school, say in St. Louis or Kansas City, as a community college student, and they knew they wanted to transfer to Missouri State. We're looking at a dual admission process so that if they said at the beginning they knew they wanted to transfer to Missouri State, then we could set up some processes for them to have access to some Missouri State resources, including advising. And so that's, I think, a really important step towards really engaging relationships more with those students before they even set foot on campus, or before that one call that we all get, or that email that we get 2 weeks before the semester starts to say, I want to transfer. So we're hoping to make that relationship development earlier for transfer students with a couple of those community colleges. So I think those are some good updates for you to be aware of. I'm so excited to be working with transfer advising through the Transfer Council, and I'm excited to be working with the Academic Advising and Transfer Center and all the amazing things that they're doing with their new name and their new charge, with really focusing on the support and the satisfaction of our transfer students as they move to Missouri State. I see there's a question in there. Is a transfer credit calculator being discussed for the Transfer Center website? No, Caitie, that has not come up, but luckily we're just starting that work. So we'll look at what that might be as a possibility. So I think it'd be good for you to check in with Ross about what that might look like, because he's going to be on a small subcommittee to look at some opportunities on there. So those, I think, are the main items I wanted to talk with you about today with respect to the shift in my role, but also the ways that we're supporting transfer students with this amazing technology. So thanks, Nathan and Caitie, for walking us through. I know based on the chat feature that the tips and the strategies that you provided today will be really helpful for everybody involved. So I did want to open it up in the last couple minutes for Caitie or Nathan to add anything, or questions from the group.
I say I don't want this to get lost because I'm also curious. That survey, when it gets sent out, will it go to advisors? Is there a way for it to go to advisors as well?
Yeah, what we've done in the past is tried to do a summary. Usually the enrollment management office or the admissions office will do a summarizing of the results, and we share that out with the community. In fact, that might be a hint for Ross. Next time we get the results back, we might do you know, a transfer advising survey summary for a forum when we do get those back, and then maybe use that as a springboard to talk about how can we improve transfer student services based on that survey. That's a great idea, Caitie. Other questions or anything else, Nathan, that you'd like to add?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Ross, I think that wraps it up for us. Is there anything else you'd like to do to conclude our forum today?
I just want to again thank you all for presenting, and if we can give them a virtual round of applause as an appreciation for taking time to present today on our transfer student population. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for your continued interest in the Advisor Forum series, and I hope to see all of you again on December 3rd at the Advisor Forum or before in another meeting. Thanks, everyone.